Okay, welcome back. I'm off TV viewers. Welcome back to another exciting episode. This week we're going to be talking about the value cost model, which I briefly touched on last week. You can find all sorts of further details in the textbook available to you at a very affordable price on Amazon. Of course, you don't have to buy it. I'm not even sure I feel that is ethical for me to recommend the textbook, but it's there for you. And if there are any problems with the Kindle version, then let me know and I'll send you the PDF, the PDF of the full textbook. So what we're going to be talking about really is the role of the founder in setting the direction for the company and creating the whole kind of ethos around the company and what it sells to the consumer. And this is it, the value cost model. So we have the core value concept, value offer, and cost minimization. That is the center, if you like, or the heart of the value cost model. And then we've got the product service and the fatal flaw, which is for the future. So the core value concept is the most difficult part of the model to understand. Now, I've said before that everything in business is simple, and anyone leaving my lecture should be able to understand everything that I've been talking about. Later on, as you dig deeper, that's when you get the subtleties, that's when you get the complexities of business. Now, the core value concept, in a sense, is very simple, but it's not something that's tangible, it's not something that's easy to define, and it's readily confused with the value offer, the actual product or service. So what am I talking about? The core value concept is the philosophy behind the product or service that's been sold. It's the soul of the company, it's the heart of the company, and it's often something that's quite a nebulous concept, which is only properly understood on many occasions only by the founder, and the founder would find it very difficult to communicate what the business is about. It's embodied in their character, if you like. And quite often when the founder leaves or dies, they take that understanding with them, and their company they leave behind sort of loses its way and collapses even. So the core value concept is what the brand, what the product, what the service means to the customer, and it's what they're buying into. What they buy is the product or service, but they buy into what it means for them. And it can be about their lifestyle, it can be about feelings of self-esteem, of aspiration. And a couple of good examples here. Now, I'll often come back to Starbucks because it's an international company that we all know very well. Even if you don't like going to Starbucks, you know what it is and you know what it's about. And I will ask in class, what is the core value concept of Starbucks? What are they trying to sell you? What are you buying into? And people will say, it's coffee. I like coffee, so I go to Starbucks to buy a coffee. But why do you like coffee? Why do you need a coffee? It's not just about having a drink. You could have water. Water is actually better for you. And it's because you're buying into what coffee means to you. And what coffee usually means to people is something slightly exotic. We all know coffee is not grown in this country, not in this weather anyway. So it comes from abroad. It's got a slightly exotic feel to it. It's sophisticated, and therefore intellectuals will drink coffee. It's like if you have a nice dinner, then you have coffee afterwards. It's got that kind of relationship. Whereas tea is something that you would have, well, if you're on a building site, you'd stop for tea. Yeah, it's more of a refreshment. It's got a slightly sort of common feel to it, if you like, in the nicest possible way. So the thing about Starbucks is the core value concept is about middle class aspiration. It makes you feel better about yourself, makes you feel sophisticated, intellectual. Certainly when I go into Starbucks, I find that my IQ springs up by about 20 points. Even though the coffee itself is not that great, really. And it's something that Howard Schultz, who had worked for Starbucks, a small Seattle-based coffee outlet, coffee chain. He had worked for them. Then I think he went off and started his own company. But he went on holiday to Italy, and he saw the way the Italians were drinking coffee, and they were drinking good quality coffee at a reasonable price, and they were drinking it as a way of starting the day. And it was a way of sort of setting the template for the day, if you like. And he thought, that'll work in America. Americans like coffee, but they're all drinking cheap coffee. They're drinking it by the gallon. Yeah? Why not offer them a premium coffee that sets the tone for their working day? So he understood really well the potential of coffee to communicate that idea. He understood what the core value concept was, and that would then come out in the premium coffee. Another founder who is very dominant over the brand image, if you like, the whole sort of feeling of the company, would be Michael O'Leary at Ryanair. Now, Michael O'Leary is famous for being a rather abrasive character. He comes across as arrogant, he's very provocative, he seems to look down on his customers, he seems to treat his customers like cattle, all of the kind of things you would expect of a really cheap airline. You would expect a cheap airline to have rubbish customer service because the only thing you're paying for is the airline ticket. And that's the key. That's the key to Michael O'Leary's presentation of his personality, is he's trying to reinforce the idea all the time that this is an airline that has cut costs to the absolute bone. So you're only paying for what you really, really need. It's the aircraft, it's the staff that you have to have on the aircraft. But if he could get rid of the cabin crew, he would. They're there because the regulations stipulate that they must be there. In private, actually, Michael O'Leary lives a very sort of sedate life, is a very modest life. Nobody knows much about his family. He's very, very protective of them. So he seems to have these two personalities. And it's the personality that he's developed to fit Ryanair. And that is all part of the core value concept. So you just know that Ryanair is going to get you there at the lowest possible price. And it's after that is what you pay for in the value offer. Yeah. So the value offer is what the airline actually offers you and that you hand money over for. And you've got to understand that the value offer, the value that you put on something must be greater than the price you pay for it. Only that way do you know that you're gaining through the purchase. If you put a value on something and the price exactly matches the value you're putting on it, well, there's no point in doing it. Yeah? I talked before about a £5 note. You know, if I was to auction a £5 note, what would you pay for it? And the very limit that you'd pay for it is £4.99. Why would you pay £5 for a £5 note? You might do it out of curiosity, but that's an additional value on it. Yeah, you might do it because it's rare. You might do it because it happens to be a pristine example, and you need a £5 note to give to someone as a gift. Yeah, you're going to be tucking it into a Christmas card and sending it to your granny. That's an additional value. A perfectly ordinary £5 note is only worth to you to pay the price on it be £4.99. The value to you is £5. The price £4.99. Yeah, you wouldn't pay £5.01 for it. That would be insane. So when it comes to an airline, the value offer is the ticket, the flight. When it comes to Starbucks, the value offer is the premium coffee. The core value concept is the lifestyle. Yeah? When it comes to a Rolex, the value offer is the watch, but the core value concept is success. It's ruggedness. It's possibly manliness. It's about mountains and yachts and Wimbledon. Yeah? At the same time, the manager must be thinking about minimizing cost. These two in the model, you'll see they overlap. It's because you have to deal with them both at the same time. So the point about Howard Schultz and Starbucks wasn't simply that he thought Americans were like premium coffee, but he thought, I can deliver this at a very low cost to myself. And there's the profit. So he would have seen the production system, and that's what it would have made all the alarms go off. And he thinks, crikey, this is machine-based. Yeah, I can set up these machines in coffee shops, and they just keep churning out espressos. The whole thing is espresso-based. The same machine produces steam, produces hot water, so you can heat the milk, you can put different syrups in, different flavors, yeah, but basically it's that production line of the espresso, and it is minimum cost in terms of the labor because it's an unskilled job. The machine is the one doing all the work. It looks impressive, yeah, and that's the other thing, you see, it's an impressive looking system. So it's really important that the machine is making lots of noises and steam is coming out and you can smell the coffee. But the cost minimization is in the fact that it is machine-based. Okay, the future, new product service. Now this has to connect back to the core value concept, the value offer, and the cost minimization. If it doesn't, then you're onto a new business plan. You're into a new business. And 80% of new businesses fail. That's how risky they are. When you're working at a company, you're not dreaming up new ideas for the future. What you're doing is you're looking what the company already does and to see if you can get more out of it. So if you work for Greggs, yeah, you don't sort of think to yourself, oh, you know, we should be doing chocolate, yeah. What you would do is you would stand there in the bakery, that huge factory. You'd be watching the sausage rolls going by and whatever else, and you'd think, what can we make on this production line that we're not making already? And you might think to yourself, chips. People like chips. Greggs customers would have a sausage roll, but on the way home they might have a bag of chips. That's a typical thing that they would buy. Can we make chips on this production line? Yes, we can. As a consequence, chips. Well, they're called potato wedges, and they're made in an oven. They're made in an oven at the same time, or you know, just after the sausage rolls have gone through. Then you get a batch of potato wedges go through. They're not deep frying them. They don't have deep fryers. So it'd be no point in saying in working for Greggs and saying, oh, I've got a good idea. Let's do fish and chips. Our customers like fish and chips. Let's start doing them because we don't have the deep fryers. Can't be done. Yeah, it would mean another factory. If you want to do chocolate, it's another factory. I think a very good way of visualizing this would be a company like BMW. Well, any car company. Even if you're not particularly into cars, you can readily understand what car companies are trying to do. A car company would have a range based on a core model. This is the BMW 3 Series. The core model is the saloon or the sedan, the four-door version. And most of the ones they make will be that four-door version. 60-70% will be the saloon. Working for BMW, you'd be thinking, what can we spin off that model? Well, one thing you can do is put a more powerful engine in. Same car, yeah, put a more powerful engine in, now you've got a sports car. Where does that engine come from? Is it being specially developed? Only if you're completely mad. Yeah, a good manager would look at the next range up, which is the 5 Series. 5 Series, bigger car, heavier, bigger engines. Take one of those big engines, put it in the smaller 3 Series. Hey presto, you got a sports car. Yeah, that's the secret of the M3. What else can you do with it? Obvious one, slightly different body style, you make it an estate. Now it's really good for families, it's good for people who've got dogs, what else? Antique dealers, anyone who needs to be carrying out around a whole load of luggage or big boxes or something bulky. Yeah, and it's more or less the same car. The doors, the front doors would be the same, the rear doors a little bit different, but the engine's the same, the bonnet's the same, the whole of the front of the car's the same, different tailgate, different roof, different rear panels, but otherwise a very, very similar car. You can do a coupe. We're a bit of trouble with the coupe because it's a different body style. Same platform, same engines, similar interior. All the electronics will be the same as the sedan, but it has a different body, and that different body is quite expensive to make. So if you're doing a coupe, although it's got less on it, fewer doors, and that suggests it ought to be cheaper, actually this is going to be a more expensive car to try and take back some of that cost. And it's the same with the convertible version. You chop the roof off, but then you've got to do other things to the car to strengthen it up. It's actually a load of trouble to a car manufacturer. So the convertible has got to be a premium model. They've got to be charging more money for it, and even then they may not make much of a profit. So it tends to be a halo product. And if a company is not wealthy, if a company isn't making lots of sales, then they won't have a convertible version. Yeah, Jaguar, for example, always strapped for cash, and down the years they will have done only a sedan version. Yeah, that's all they have, just that core model. They might do an estate, station wagon version, maybe no coupe. The high-speed version will simply be a turbocharged standard car. There'll be no off-road version, no convertible. Yeah, they have a sports car, they have a separate one, and it would be just the one model, and they would keep that in production for 20 years, yeah, to try and get some money back on it. They can only really afford to do one core sedan. If BMW are looking to the future, well, it has to have the same core value concept. What are those BMW values? Speed, success, style, something about Germany, about solidity, dependability, racing success. All of that should be conjured up when you think of BMW. How does that come through in the value offer? Well, they have to do cars that look a bit sporty. Yeah, it needs to, if they're doing a new car, it needs to be in that kind of premium price range. They're not going to do a cheap car, and it needs to be communicating this ultimate driving machine message. BMW have never made the ultimate driving machine, but it's their ethos. That's part of the core value concept, to make people feel as though they're getting the finest driving car that you can get. It's all about that kind of elite feeling. Yeah. So if they do a new car, it's got to adhere to that ultimate driving machine message. You've still got to minimize the cost. You can't just say, oh, let's do a supercar. Let's do, an off-roader that can do 200 miles an hour. Yeah. It's got to be on the same platform as the existing ranges. If you do a new platform for a car, it's then got to be the birth of a whole new set of ranges of cars. It's got to use the existing factories. You don't want to be building a new plant because it works in a new kind of way. So you don't want to build a car out of plastic, for example. Yeah, that would take a new kind of factory. The problem for BMW, though, are the EVs, the electric vehicles, and they often do call for a different design, a different platform. BMW can't afford to do both an internal combustion engine and an electric vehicle, so it's a terrible dilemma for BMW. And that therein is the fatal flaw for BMW. They would always have known that they were dependent upon fuel-powered cars that are fueled by oil, petrol, and many times diesel. It's part of who they are. They're the sound of the engine, the power of the engine. Yeah, they 6-cylinder engines, V12s, V8s, all of that kind of stuff is part of the BMW ethos. An electric vehicle isn't like that. So BMW's fine until the oil runs out, and they would have known that the oil was going to run out at some point. Back in the 1950s, if you're a manager working for BMW, you'd know this is the fatal flaw. You'd know in 100 years' time, BMW need to be making a different kind of car, because that's when the oil will start running out. Yeah, you would have known that oil would get expensive. Now, you might not have known that it would be outlawed for environmental reasons, but you do know that the car is terribly dependent upon oil. And once the oil becomes a problem, then that's the end of that version of BMW, and you need to come up with a whole new business model, whole new value cost model, if you like. Yeah? And different companies, have their own fatal flaws. So with building boats, it's about wood, and ships were traditionally made with wood up until about 1850, and then iron comes along, and people realize they can make boats out of iron, they can make them out of steel, and that totally changes the whole way that boats are produced, the size of the boats, therefore the kind of stuff that they can carry much more, they need much bigger ports, yeah, and iron boats totally change the whole shipbuilding industry, the whole shipping of freight. Let's go back to Starbucks then. Just a brief little review. We've talked a lot about Starbucks anyway, because it's a handy example. So we've got Howard Schultz realizing that the middle classes need some sort of pick-me-up on their way to work. They need to feel good about themselves. They need some kind of aspirational thing that they can buy. And he realizes coffee is it. So he comes up with his artisan premium coffee, just copied it from Italy, that's all. The first machines came from Italy. Cost minimization, everything is based on the espresso. It's mass-produced coffee. Mass-produced in the same way that Mercedes-Benz is mass-produced, the same way that BMW is, which is something in this country we never quite understand. We've never been able to understand how something can be mass-produced and premium at the same time. As a consequence, Rolls-Royce motor cars, they make about 2,000 a year. Mercedes-Benz, 2 million a year, something like that. Okay, so Starbucks, Howard Schultz understands that the value offer and cost minimization go together. What of the future? Yeah, how can you extend this? Different flavors, different syrups, same production line. Yeah, it's the same unskilled labor. It's the same core value concept. It's something you're selling to the middle classes. You're not thinking, oh, let's do a cheap coffee. Let's do espresso with instant coffee. Disgusting as that would be. Yeah, so it all fits with the current business plan, which is the value cost model. What's the fatal flaw, though? Well, it's the espresso. And if there's ever a time when people turn against espresso, turn against coffee, then Starbucks is stuffed. Yeah, they need to do something else, and that would be a whole new business. Is that likely to happen? Well, no, not really. I can't imagine it happening, but it's something you'd have to be aware of. Like if you worked in the tobacco industry in the 1950s, working for Marlboro. What's Marlboro about? Marlboro cigarettes is about the cowboy. It's about freedom. Bizarrely, it's about the open air, fresh air. Rather strange core value concept, and they communicate that through cigarettes. Yeah. So the value offer of the cigarettes, cost minimization, all cigarettes the same. Yeah. It's mass produced in huge factories. So tobacco, cigarettes, the cost of production very, very low. The company that made Marlboro would have been doing fantastic business, huge profits. Yeah. What's the fatal flaw though? You always knew working in tobacco that if for some reason people turn against tobacco, that's the end of your company. You would then have seen the health concerns starting to appear. You would have known that long term is the end, the death of your company, just as much as it's the death of your own customers. And what I want you to do, class task, think about a product like Parker pens. Parker pens still available. Previously, though, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, they made a high-quality, handmade fountain pen. So a pen with a separate nib and using liquid ink. Interestingly, Parker started off as an American company, found their market in the UK and moved to the UK and became a British company. What was the fatal flaw in what they were doing? Well, people not writing anymore. Back in 1950, 1960, that's ridiculous. How can people not be writing? If you want to get a message to someone, you have to write it down. So what else could it possibly be? They might have seen typewriters as a bit of a threat. But if you work for Parker's and you see the word processor come onto the market, then you know that that's the end of your company. Because this plays right into the fatal flaw. If people aren't writing and if they're tapping out on the keyboard with their fingers, game over for fountain pens. So then you have to chase after a different market. Now I've got a Parker pen, lovely thing it is. I never use it because I use a word processor, I'm on the computer, but I will never sell it. And in fact, I'd love to have another Parker pen. It's just a nice thing to own. So have a think about how you can take Parker pen into the next century. I said I was going to talk about reflective practice, and I'll do that as part of this presentation. And it's really trying to emphasize to you the importance of reflection. So it's the importance of taking an experience that you have as a professional and then putting it with the academic knowledge that you've gained over the previous 2 years. And that's what a professional manager does. That's why it's good to have a degree as a manager. And it is very much a skill. Someone who doesn't have that academic knowledge would be very good, I think, at dealing with problems as they arise, but they're a firefighter. Yeah, they're not a professional manager, so they can deal with each problem as it comes up, and some problems they can't deal quite so well with, and they never really learn from any of these experiences because they can't see a structure for it. They can't see that there might be steps that they have to go through. Whereas you've learned from theories, and you'd see, if a new product is coming out, you have to go 4 Ps: price, place, product, production, or whatever, or promotion. Yeah, you would go through those steps. Let's have a look at the bottom here. You're starting off with the academic theory. If you're wise enough to do the placement year, and I bet some of you regret not doing it now, but if you did that placement year, you've had practical experience. You can put these two together. Think about the impact they have on each other, how the practical experience will change the academic theory, change it in a way that economists wouldn't accept. Economists have a core theory and they're constantly trying to fit reality to that theory. And it's only when it really doesn't fit at all, and there's this huge dichotomy between academic theory and reality experience, that they have to throw the theory away and start with a whole new theory. We're constantly adapting our theories. Yeah, that's why I talk about the history of business being so much older than that, the history of the theory of business. They work together, and we're constantly changing our view of how these theories work. So we're quite happy to reevaluate a theory and then apply it to a new practical situation. And this calls for us to have reflective learning, a kind of cognitive housekeeping, if you like. You take an experience and you try and make sense of it using a theory, and then you develop a new approach, apply it, change the theory perhaps, have a new experience, reflect on it. It's all about having that intellectual space. It means that as a professional manager, you will have to deal with a situation on the spot, off the cuff, off the top of your head. As you're standing there, you deal with it. But later on that day, as you've been chauffeured home in your Mercedes-Benz and you're reclining across the back seat, you don't just think, gosh, that was a funny thing that happened today. You think, right, how can I make sense of this? How can I make something coherent out of it so that next time it comes up, I can deal with it better? And it might be you're in a meeting about a new product and you went through your head, okay, so it's a suggestion of a new product. I must think about price. What price are we going to set it at? The product specification, where the sales channel is going to be. So how do we place it where the customer can find it, and how do we promote it? And in your Mercedes-Benz on the way home, you sort of think to yourself, actually, there's a little bit more to it than this. I remember there was a 7Ps model where we have to talk about people, for example. Yeah. And then there's reflective practice. Not just about thinking, it's about acting in a reflective way. So there are 3 different levels to this, or at least there are suggested by these 2 authors. There's the single loop, where you keep your original way of thinking, but you slightly change the way you're doing things, like on a production line. You fix the production line, but you need to tweak it. You need to perhaps change the way that some of the workers are working around each other. Double loop, that's when you go back to the way you've installed everything and you change your original thinking. So it might be that you reconfigure the production line. And then triple loop is transformational. If you're working in a factory, then you might decide, actually, we're going to get out of production altogether, close down our plants, and people will make things at home. Yeah? IKEA, for example. They don't assemble the furniture, you assemble it yourself. And you can see here how the single and the double loop wrap around each other. And as students, you have to have reflective writing. You need to know how you can develop an idea through your writing. So you first describe it, then you interpret it, and then you produce an outcome that will then help you in the future. And that's very much what I'm asking for in the assignments. Some of you may know about Gibbs' reflective cycle, a very good way of bringing structure to an experience. And as a professional manager, you would go through the description. So you describe what's happening. You then think about your feelings that you had. I'm never terribly sold on the idea of the feelings. I think you go straight to evaluation. But you would go to evaluation. Was it good? Was it bad? So you had this meeting about a new product. Yeah, and you describe the meeting. You describe this young buck has come up with a new idea, and you criticized it on price and whatever. And then you evaluate, well, was that a good meeting? Was it a good product? And then you would analyze it, break it down, come to a conclusion, and what's the action plan then? And then you're into the next meeting. And again, You know, you're talking about this new product, blah, 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 round you go again. Think then about how you can look at other products. So we've got McDonald's there. How should McDonald's be doing fish and chips, for example, or does that involve new machinery? Can McDonald's change? What would be the fatal flaw in McDonald's? Yeah, have a think about that. Otherwise, here we come to a screeching halt. So thank you very much for your time. I hope you came to the lecture, really, but this might be a good stand-in, these recordings. And that's it. Thank you.